So, I just finished An Ember in the Ashes series, and this was an emotional boot camp. Don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed it. It was just long, and it was a lot, and it was also kind of a drag at some points. And I'm finding it hard to soldier on in these trying times. So after spending over a month and a half in this universe with these characters, I'm so ready for something new. I feel like I am very much in a reading slump right now. I do not want to be making any decisions about what I'm reading. I just want to vibe. I want to have some fun, and I want to do something chaotic. So today I'm taking my boyfriend to the bookstore, and I'm going to have him pick the books that I read for the next week. I have no say. I have no veto power. No, I just realized I vetoed a book. I'm handing over full control to a man who has not read a book in 10 years. This could either heal me emotionally or very much destroy me further, but either way, content. So without further ado, let's go. Bagels?
Yes.
Do you have a strategy at all?
Chaos.
What?
Maybe one down, we'll see.
Oh, okay.
I think you might like this one.
I just thought.
We'll have to see.
Wait a second. Is that us?
I was gonna say the same thing. Perfect.
Oh, great. We wrote in our book. Should we get coffee? Yes.
I have 5 books. You get your one veto. There are 2 books that you only could choose one of. I Who Have Never Known Men, and the other one is The Dream Hotel. Both seem to be about oppressed women, which is why you only can choose one.
This one does look really interesting, but it's a little thick. I say we go with the skinny books. I feel like I'm gonna pick that one. Who's paying for this? Okay, we're back. Explain your choices.
All right, so we walked out with 4 books. First book is Morbidly Yours. It's a romance book, but kind of looks like us a little bit.
It does.
A little bit, but
The little
the
glasses.
girl's also Texan, so I'm like, hey, close enough, that fits.
Okay, next.
Then there are 2 books that I chose that seem to both be about oppressed women. I made her pick one of the 2. And we ended up with I Who Have Never Known Men.
Mm-hmm. Okay, what is this? Because this you got from the fiction section, and I didn't see what this is at all.
So I'm trying to remember. Give me one moment. It was a staff recommended book.
Is it fiction?
Yes. I think this one is about a married couple. The title of this book is Speculation. Department of Speculation.
Mm-hmm. Well, I do a lot of speculating, so it sounds like it's right up my alley. This one, when we were looking at the science fiction books, I saw that book immediately and I was like, I need to pick that book up and look at what it is.
So I liked the cover art, which drew my attention because
It's
I'm
so
a very
cool.
picture-oriented person. It's called The Kraken Wakes.
What's it about?
Aliens
Okay.
that come to the ocean.
Okay. I hate the ocean and I hate aliens, so sounds like it's gonna be great.
I don't know if any of these books are going to be good.
I feel like they all have the same like color story going on too. This is like very much my vibe. Cool. All right, well, I guess I'll see you in a week. Bye.
Let's go. Good work.
Ow! All right, we are back from the bookstore. I did want to make just a quick kind of note / disclaimer. I do typically try to buy my books secondhand. Most of the books that I own are either thrifted or I bought them online secondhand. And I generally try to buy books, especially books that I'm reading for the first time, secondhand. I feel like reading and like book talk, book girlies are very much like the current wave of capitalism right now. In my eyes, it's kind of just another form of overconsumption to a degree. So I really do try to prioritize shopping secondhand for my books. However, we did buy new books for this video, but we did go to Book People, which is the largest independently owned bookstore in Texas. I think it's very important to shop local. And I also have not been to Book People in probably honestly like 3 years. So I really just wanted to go back because I just love that place. It's so beautiful. But I just wanted to make that quick disclaimer that you do not need brand new books. Secondhand books are just as good. And if you're going to buy your books new, try to buy them from a locally or independently owned bookstore. Okay, moving on. We've got books to read. This is going to be a challenge. Like if I can read all 4 of these books in 1 week, I'm gonna be really proud of myself. I was looking at these books trying to decide which one I'm gonna read first, and I think I decided on The Kraken Wakes. This book is by John Wyndham. This book just looks so interesting. I really like the cover. It seems very short, something I could probably read in a couple days. Seems like the most I don't know how I'll feel about it book, so for that reason I wanted to read it first to just get it out of the way and see if I like it. So I'm gonna change into some comfy clothes and I'm gonna park my butt right there and start reading. Hi, it is 8:35 p.m. and I'm only on page 41 of The Kraken Wakes, and unfortunately I'm not having the best time being able to focus. This book was written in the 50s and John Wyndham, who wrote it, is English, and so the turns of phrase and the writing style is just something that I am not used to, and so it's taking my brain a little bit to adjust to it, and for that reason I'm reading very slowly. It's getting hard for my brain to enjoy it, so I am contemplating if I should just stop now and pick up another book just for the sake of wanting to garner some enjoyment right now, because I know this will take me a minute, and the whole goal is to see if I can try to read all these books within a week. The whole reason I wanted to do this is because I am in a reading slump, and this book is not helping me get out of it. Part of me feels bad, but I'm going to come back to it. I think I'm going to pick up I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman. I'm going to try and see if I can't just knock it out quickly. Okay, my goal is to finish this book tonight. Starting book number 3. All right, I'm back. Hello. Good to see you all. It is technically Saturday morning, but I did finish 3 out of the 4 books, and I finished them by Tuesday night, I think. I did really good, guys. I read 3 books in less than a week, which is very impressive for me personally, because my reading track record is usually like 1 book a week, maybe 2. I'm happy to say that this challenge got me out of my reading slump. I don't want to give too much away, but Jessie did a fantastic job. There might be multiple 5-star books in this recap. So let's just talk about the books. So I finished 3 out of the 4 books, and you can probably guess which one I did not finish, and that was The Kraken Wakes. I unfortunately just could not get into this book. It really was just the barrier of the language and the style of prose. It just really wasn't for me, unfortunately. And that's okay, because not every book is. So I'm not upset about it. I did say I wanted to come back to it, and I did try after I finished the other 3 books. I think I probably only got another like 20 pages, and I was like, this is just not it. It's not for me. I feel bad because I hate abandoning books, but I'm also trying to protect my joy, and this book just wasn't bringing me joy, so I moved on. So I'm definitely going to donate this book so that somebody else can enjoy it. With that out of the way, let's discuss the good stuff. So the first book that I read, as you saw, was I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman, and this book was a 5-star book. What's funny is I did a little bit of research on this book online, and I guess it's having a little popularity spurt on Book Talk. I didn't know anything about this book until I started reading it, and I was so pleasantly surprised. This book is about 40 women who are imprisoned underground in a bunker. Through a very miracle-esque sort of turn of events, they are able to escape, and this book basically follows their journey as they find freedom and, them trying to find other signs of life, and it just kind of goes from there. This book wrecked me in the best way. The setting is very dystopian, but without any explanation. It definitely feels very allegorical, and I personally thought the ambiguity of the setting was perfect. I know some people really found that to be frustrating, but I felt like it had to be that way. You find yourself going through the emotions of the characters as the book progresses, like right alongside with them. You're just as confused, you're just as emotionally disoriented as they are. You then find yourself curious and hopeful and ultimately accepting of the fate that comes to you. It's just so, the slow sort of like quiet devastation of this novel just like creeps in so beautifully. I was just obsessed. I feel like one of the most compelling parts of this book is how the narrator serves as sort of a foil to the other women. Like, everything in life is just novel to her, where the other women are sort of bound by their memories, their emotions, their faith of like their past life. She is purely just driven by a hunger for knowledge, and her lack of past gives her like sort of a freedom, but it also disconnects her emotionally. So I feel like her detachment is what propels the story forward. Again, with everything being so novel and new, it is still interesting for you to read about someone who doesn't know what a chair or a table is. Like, it's just crazy. But this detachment within her is also sort of what makes you question one of the main themes of this book, which is what truly makes us human. One of the other themes I found, which was like the persistence of women to be caregivers, even when all of our humanity, our societal norms have been stripped away. I thought that that was so tender. Like, it really just is the feminine instinct to preserve. I found that really compelling. There was an afterword in the book written by Sophie McIntosh, which I also really loved. She said, "The women can continue to find a sort of beauty in companionship, adapting to a new way of being, existing in an environment empty of what they know, but still underpinned by compassion. It's not necessarily extolling this kind of existence. Perhaps in its own way, the novel slyly demonstrates the natural peacefulness that a world without men might possess." I just thought it was kind of cheeky almost. Like, this book really does kind of exhibit what a world without men would look like. This book also asks, how do time and language keep us tethered to the idea of humanity even when everything else is stripped away? I also found myself thinking about sort of the role of memory and how that keeps us human or makes us human. You know, in the beginning of the novel, the 39 other women, at first they withhold their information, their memories, their knowledge of the past from the narrator because it's sort of like their last like safekeeping that they have of the world before, and sort of maintain that element of their humanity in the presence of this other person who doesn't really have any. There was also a beautiful theme of love, and is it something that we learn or that we instinctively feel? Does it present itself, or how does it present itself if there is no context for it? I just found the themes of this book to be so compelling. There's the theme of the strive for knowledge, particularly in isolation, of freedom and liberty versus safety and confinement, the role of obviously women as caregivers in apocalyptic or sort of like lawless situations. How do time and language become forms of legacy, and ultimately what defines our humanity, what makes us human? I wrote at the end of my book, I wrote a little note that says what makes us human based on what I learned in this book. I wrote communication and language, sharing our pasts, loving and being loved, sharing knowledge, and passing the time together. There's a particularly beautiful quote in this book where the narrator says, "Every 30 days I say to myself that a month has gone by, but those are mere words. They don't really give me time. Perhaps you never have time when you are alone. You only acquire it by watching it go by in others." And I just loved that. Oh my gosh. All I could see when I was reading that was the little crinkles that, you know, people in your life get when they get older. Particularly, I was thinking of like my parents and my family who's older. Like, just seeing time pass in someone else, I felt like was so beautiful. Oh my gosh, I don't know why I'm getting emotional. That was such a beautiful way to describe like human connection, seeing time pass within each other. I just like can't even. I was a mess at the end of this book. And one last thing that I'll say before I get into the spoiler section is knowing that the author was half Jewish and her family actually fled Belgium during World War II. I think that experience was really prevalent in her portrayal of destruction, isolation, and sort of the fragility of community. So I thought that that was a really interesting tidbit to learn. Okay, I'm gonna move into just like the tiniest little spoiler section just because I want to talk about a couple of things that I just can't not talk about. So there's gonna be a little box. When the box is gone, then there are no more spoilers. Okay, the shift at the end to the present tense was so subtle, I almost missed it, but it was like devastating, the realization that came with that shift, knowing that she stayed in that bunker for the rest of her life and died there. You know, it means it's the end of her story. She never found anyone else. No one ever came for her. Like, she spent 20 years in isolation, and this like back and forth that she has with this idea that somebody may come one day and read her story, and like the importance of storytelling. This also builds on to the point I was talking about earlier about the passage of time. She says, "Perhaps I have tried to create time through writing these pages. I begin, I fill them with words, I pile them up, and still I don't exist because nobody is reading them. But if that person comes, they will read them, and I will have time in their mind. They will have my thoughts in them. The reader and I thus mingled will constitute something living that will not be me because I will be dead, and will not be that person as they were before reading, because my story added to their mind will then become part of their thinking. I will only be truly dead if nobody ever comes." Which, given the previous 160 pages, I don't think anyone's coming. It's just so sad. Like, it's so devastating, this ending for her. The fact that we get no explanation as to what happened, and that is the point, like, it's just so sad. Oh my god. And then I went back and reread the first section where she's writing like from present day, but you don't understand what she's talking about because we don't know everything that's happened yet. She talks about her relationship with Anthea, and it just is so sad. She has no concept of storytelling and relaying your past as a way of connecting with others, like at this beginning portion of the book. But then as you get to the end, it's like this full circle moment where she's writing her story. I also just thought the arc of her character overall kind of spoke to sort of a larger aspect of society and how cultural norms have shifted. We started as large groups of people, like villages that were, 100 people that raised children. We did everything as a group, traveled as a group. And now we have, over so many years, sort of whittled down that experience to be able to comfortably operate through life, really as a pair, generally as one person. We have sort of optimized life to be able to do it alone, but typically in couples. I felt like that was reflected in this book as well. They start in this group of 40, big group, and then eventually they travel. Some of them do die off, but they decide to settle eventually at a later point, and they're in houses of groups of like 8 to 10, and then they decide, like some of us who are just couples would like to have our own house, so then it becomes houses of just couples, and then eventually everybody dies off and it just becomes the narrator. She spends 20 years in isolation by herself. I felt like that was just sort of a really poignant reflection of that. Okay, those were my thoughts on I Who Have Never Known Men. This book is a 5-star book for me. I was so pleasantly surprised and delighted at how much I enjoyed this, and I definitely am looking forward to reading it again. I mean, obviously I got a lot out of it, but I think that there's still so much more to garner from a second read. I highly recommend this book. It was so good, and yeah. Moving on. All right, the next book that I read was Morbidly Yours by Ivy Fairbanks, and Jesse picked this book up because he was like, oh my gosh, that cover is us. Like, that's us as people back before I wore glasses. Also because the main character, Lark, in this book is from Austin, which I take issue with that. More on that later. But this book is about Callum, who runs a mortuary in Ireland. His granddad has recently passed, and he can only inherit the family business if he gets married by his 35th birthday. And Lark, who recently moved from Texas to Ireland after the passing of her husband, and she happens to move next door to Callum's mortuary, thinking it's a bed and breakfast. And she's basically determined to sort of help him find the one. They sort of develop this quick friendship. She's very much the golden retriever to his black cat. This book definitely has a very wholesome vibe at its core, which I loved. I loved the character development, especially Callum. He was so endearing, and honestly, I related to a lot of his sort of values around love and sex and marriage. He's very gentle and introverted and surprisingly complex. His internal monologue had some really tender passages. His love is very cautious but also very deeply felt, which I think anybody who sort of approaches relationships carefully will sort of resonate with. So for that reason, I really loved him. His character was really kind of what made this book for me. And I was so on board with this book basically up until like the third act. Like, I was ready to give this book 5 stars, and which for contemporary romance has never happened for me. I loved so many aspects of the development in this story. Like, kind of throughout that, what I did struggle with in particular was Sean's character. Sean works with Lark at the animation studio, and he's basically the antagonist in this book, but he really just truly felt like more of a caricature than an actual antagonist. Like, he was just evil, but like in a way that felt very black and white and not grounded in reality. He felt like a cartoon villain. There's one point in the book where Lark is saying goodbye to everyone. She says good night. She said, see y'all on Monday. That's what makes her Texan, is her use of the word y'all. And he said, y'all, sorry, we don't speak banjo here. What? Who is saying that? Is there a real human on the earth that would say that? That just didn't work for me. I like openly laughed at that because I was like, who is speaking banjo anywhere? I just didn't understand that at all. Anyways, and like in that same vein, some of his dialogue was just very over the top. Like, I had a hard time believing a character like him could actually exist in real life, especially in a professional setting. Like, that's what really gets me about this is we're at a place of business. Like, we come here to work, not like be dicks to each other. It's just like didn't make sense to me. I don't know. Maybe I I have just not met a man like that, therefore I cannot find it believable, but whatever. In that same vein, the other things that I took issue with were the choices that this author made for Callum. I loved his character so much. I especially loved the beginning where he talks about how sex is very important to him. He doesn't like to have sex with people unless he develops a deep sort of emotional relationship to them. Oh my gosh. Oh. Do you have anything to say? Go. 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 Gosh. Okay, you're done. Oh my gosh. Somebody let a demon loose in here. What was I saying? And there was even a moment where Lark goes home and looks up. She's like looking at forums about like the asexual community, like in a deep like wanting to understand him. It's like, oh my gosh, are we finally gonna get like good asexual representation in a romance book? But no, we didn't get that. He agrees to a situation that I just feel did not make sense for his character given everything we had learned about him so far. I'll divulge on that more in the spoiler section, but sort of in that same vein, some of the sex scenes, I was like, they were almost perfect. The build up to them, especially the very first one, there's this wonderful sort of dialogue that happens before that I was just obsessed with. And then they just got slightly too explicit. There are a couple words in particular that when they get used, I just get taken totally out. And maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm just a little bit of a prude. It sort of like ruined the wholesomeness of Cal's character for me. And again, like given everything that's been established about his character, about his desire for a deep emotional connection, there were just a few lines that were like a little bit jarring for me. But overall, I loved them. That's what was so disappointing, is that they were almost perfect. They just were not quite there. Finally, sort of my last nitpick that really just didn't make this book perfect for me is the third act. I understand why it was there structurally. In my opinion, it just leaned way too hard on traditional tropes like miscommunication, betrayal of trust, the big regret moment. It felt like the characters that we had spent 200 pages with had briefly vanished and like I didn't know who they were anymore. So I really at that point just lost steam. It was getting into sort of my tried and true, if people would just communicate more clearly, then we could cut 50 pages out of this book easily, which I think could have happened here in my personal opinion. There was just a lot, like we were setting up so well and then the third act really took a nosedive. And one last note before getting into the spoilers, I am so tired of contemporary romance books ending with an epilogue. This one, not one, but two epilogues. This trope is like getting so old. It's as lazy to me as like fading out a song. Oh, also, has this author, I doubt after reading this book that she has ever actually like lived in Austin or in Texas, which is not uncommon for writers to like not live in the places that they're describing, but has she ever even been here? Has she read anything other than like Trey Beza article of like top 10 things to do in Austin? Like, I don't really think she's actually ever been here. The details of Austin that come up felt like just like surface level name dropping. Her mom is like, you'll never guess who I met in the H-E-B deli the other day. Who is out here talking about the H-E-B deli? That is just not a thing. That just doesn't exist. Like, it's just H-E-B. Also, nobody who is a native Austinite is taking a first date, even if that person, it's not explicitly stated whether he is or not, but even if that person is not from here, nobody is taking a first date to watch the bats under the South Congress Bridge. I'm sorry. And if you're doing that, God bless you. It's just not happening. Her personhood as someone from Austin just didn't work for me. Like, it didn't feel based in any kind of reality. I'm sorry. I feel like it's just normal in books to just be like at an amusement park or at the grocery store, like to just be generic. Like, I felt like she wrote the book with those generic words in it and then was like, okay, I'm going to make this person from Austin, Control F, where are generic places, insert with specific place, Six Flags, H-E-B. It didn't work for me. I'm sorry. I don't know why I'm getting so mad about that. Okay, I'm going to do super quick spoiler section where I air my grievances specifically about the third act. I'm so over the third act breakup. Again, like they could have just been very communicative with each other. They know, like, this is the thing that I hate about romance books is like they know they're both in love, but one of them has such like a personal hang up over like, I'm not good enough for him, therefore we can never be together. Like, be so fucking for real. Like, I just cannot. I'm an incredibly honest human being, sometimes to a fault. I just would never find myself in situations like this. If I liked someone, I'm gonna be for real and tell them. Like, and I understand this book is not about me, but it was just like, it's just so annoying. I hate the miscommunication trope in romance books. Also, Callum punching Sean at the bar felt so wildly out of character for him. He's shy and socially anxious. Like, why is he suddenly just like throwing punches? I understand the emotional buildup of like him wanting to defend Lark, but like, and maybe it's just because like I am not a person who is into violence. I feel like it didn't track for his character. I don't know if anybody else felt like that. Sean is her co-worker. There are people, like, we're in a public place. I don't know what the laws are like in Ireland, but I don't think you can just go around like assaulting people casually and then it's just fine. I personally feel like Sean would be the type of person to pursue legal action after that. And my biggest gripe of all, the fact that there was a couple opportunities for it to end and be very satisfactory. We had to write one more chapter just for them to have sex and that be the end of the book. I can't handle that. I'm sick of it. The same thing happened, I think it was a 7-Year Slip that I had the same issue with. We had to write a sex scene at the end just for it to end with Lark having some sort of like emotional resolution. Let the emotional resolution be the climax in and of itself. Like, let that be the ending. Why does it have to happen while we're having sex with each other? It felt nothing compared to the previous 2 in the book. Like, those were so wonderful. This one was just like, pissed me off. And then we had 2 epilogues, which were annoying. Anyways. Oh my gosh. All that to say, this book was still very good despite my nitpicks. For that reason, it was a 4-star read for me. This was very, very good for a contemporary romance. You can sort of look past all of the pile of tropes that accumulate in the 3rd act. But other than that, this was such a great, enjoyable book. And that was Morbidly Yours by Ivy Fairbanks. I definitely recommend it. It was such a fun read. Okay, let's move on to the last book. The last book that I read was Department of Speculation by Jenny Offill. I hope that's how you pronounce her name. Y'all. This book is incredible. I am obsessed with this book. I spent the better part of yesterday just filling this book up with, I mean, you can't really see, but filling this book up with so many words and thoughts and feelings. I can't even describe to you how much I love this book. This book felt like looking into a mirror. Like, I relate so much to the main character, almost like painstakingly. I felt like it was such a raw and beautiful depiction of sadness, depression, and trying to find your identity. This book is essentially a chronicle of a marriage, from falling in love to becoming parents to dealing with infidelity to sort of trying to rebuild. But it's also about the interior world and sort of monologue of a woman who is trying not to disappear, who is trying to find herself despite all of this. It was so rich and poetic, very biting. This author has such a razor sharp ability to detail complex emotions in like 1-sentence paragraphs, or even like 1-sentence period, that just like knock the wind out of you. This narrator's internal world and internal self is so well crafted. Truly, it was like she had been written just for me to enjoy. Her descriptions of depression and depressive feelings were so vulnerable and so real. I feel so horrible that there are some people who read this book and found this main character to be insufferable or just be ranting like a crazy woman. That's the point, that she is just a real human. She's imperfect, just like all of us are. This book explores themes of depression and self-worth, the idea as women that marriage and children can like save us, can save our lives. There's the evolution of love, of like falling in love and choosing to continue to love someone to sustain a marriage. It explores our identities as, you know, as mothers and as wives, but also just as women. It explores the relationship between pain and art and creativity. What I especially loved was the central theme of it all, which is how do we deem ourselves worthy of love? Feelings of unworthiness of love and friendship. For this book particularly, I'm going to do more of like reading within the book just because I took so many notes in it. I particularly loved, again, this theme of like our lives being saved by something, like particularly having kids in this novel. It feels like there's this section where she sort of questions how sparrows are not native to America, but they come to eat the insects that kill so many of the trees. So it says, did the sparrows save the trees? Yes, the trees were saved. In wintertime, when there are no insects and snow is on the ground, does not the sparrow have a hard time? Yes, he has a very hard time, and many die of hunger. That is sort of a metaphor for what is happening in her life and in so many other women's lives where they have children to save them, to give them purpose, yet there's this looming fear of abandonment later. Again, that theme of like worthiness of love. There's this quote that I was reminded so much of throughout this book that I was like constantly writing down, which is, to know love is to know suffering. It says in the book, the invention of the ship is also the invention of the shipwreck. You can see sort of throughout the book how her life meaning shifts from the self to the partner, then to her child. But then, like, after having her child later on, she talks about how she just doesn't know what she wants. She says, "There is still such crookedness in my heart. I had thought loving two people so much would straighten it." Like, no, girl, no. You have to be whole before you can love somebody else. Her just general dissatisfaction with everything in life. Like, she's such a hater, so much that even her therapist is like, "You need to chill." And she just like cries the whole way home because it's too real. She eventually has to come to terms with the fact that she may become everything that she has hated before in her life. I loved her character arc. There's this advice that she puts in a section of the book from 1896 that says, "The indiscriminate reading of novels is one of the most injurious habits to which a married woman can be subject. Besides the false views of human nature it will impart, it produces an indifference to the performance of domestic duties and contempt for ordinary realities." I just love that. Men are so scared of us reading books and becoming smarter than them that they will do everything in their power to maintain and uphold our identities as wives, as mothers, as keepers of the house. It is just so funny. I can already tell that my ramblings on this book are a lot less coherent than the other books. Her obsession with time and life passing too quickly, the way it captures this incessant desire to look forward to the future, I felt was so relatable for me in particular. Using this form of escapism and obsession of planning out the future is it's just not healthy, but I can't help but do it all the time. Reading her do it in this book, I'm like, this girl is crazy, yet I know damn well I'd be doing the same thing every day. She says, "I secretly hope that I might be a genius. Why else can no amount of sleeping pills fill my brain? But in the morning my daughter asks me what a cloud is and I cannot say." I said ADHDers relate to that. There was a lot more that we related to in this book, in my opinion. Okay, I think I'm getting to the point where it's really getting into spoiler territory, so I'm just gonna go ahead and put up a spoiler box. I am obsessed with her shift to third person dialogue. It reflects her dissociation from this situation so perfectly. Watching her marriage and herself unravel from outside her body is just so brilliant, especially connected to the other scenes where she's trying to sleep at night and she feels her body floating to the ceiling and is desperately trying to stop it. Oh my gosh, it's just chef's kiss. It's just so good. In this whole section where she talks about when her husband asks her to consider her happiest time, and she, having what she calls a crooked heart, spoke of a time when she was all alone in the country with no one wanting a thing from you, not even love. She has such this deep desire to be untethered and to be alone. And I so relate to that. I don't know if that's if normal people feel that way or if it's just me. Do I need to seek therapy? Most definitely. Back on page 93, she talks about crazy husbands who have these weird rules for their wives, some who require mileage receipts, another who wants sex at 3 a.m., one who forbids haircuts, another who refuses to feed the pets. She's talking to a woman at the playground who says her husband rifles through her purse for receipts. If he finds one for the wrong kind of ATM, he posts it on the refrigerator, highlighted in red. She shrugs. He can't help it. What exactly am I waiting for her to say? That she married a fool? That her house is built on ashes? And here I am, the lucky one for once. Such blinding good fortune to have married him. The wives have requirements too, of course. What they require is unswerving obedience, loyalty unto death. When I went back and was reading through after having finished and read that, I was like, oh my gosh. Because I tabbed it at first because I was like, this is so relatable. I often kind of feel this sometimes where I listen to other people talk about their relationships, and sometimes I find myself just grateful for the relationship that I am in. But then when I came back to that after reading the end, I realized that what's so sad about that section is she is speaking so earnestly, and eventually her marriage ends up no better, potentially worse. These women require unswerving obedience, loyalty unto death, which they get from their husbands. They might be what the narrator would consider miserable, but meanwhile, she's happy with her husband, but he still was unfaithful to her. He still cheated on her. That doesn't make her any better. She no longer has the right to sort of have this moral grandstanding about her relationship. It is just as bad. And it's just so sad. Another thing I loved is her yearning to move away from the city, to move to the country or the suburbs. That is very much where I am at my point in life. I just want to move away to the Pacific Northwest and just see beautiful things all day long and forget about my problems. And ultimately they do end up, moving out to the country. This section where she meets up with an ex of hers, and it's like fun at first, and all of these like feelings sort of come back to light, and then she tells him about the infidelity. She sees him register that she is not what he had thought she was. Something crosses his face: fear, pity. She forces herself to stop talking. He is twitchy now, ready to leave and go to a meeting, she thinks. She walks through the park, holding herself carefully. There is a sense of being unprotected in an open space. I am at the mercy of the elements, she thinks. She was so vulnerable in that moment to open up to someone else, and the idea that like she held in her head what they were, what they used to be, and was trying to cling on to that, but then she opened up and was vulnerable to him, and that has now changed. It's sort of been ruined in a way. And this idea that like we hold these identities in other people's minds, and it's so fragile that just her like being honest about being cheated on can ruin that, and can sort of send her into this weird feeling of just like not having an identity, of like not knowing who you are to other people, let alone yourself. It was so haunting. They eventually do decide to move. They get a puppy. She starts taking medicine, and even though she still desires to be alone, she finds herself healing. She finds that he's starting to love her again. What I loved at the end was added like small theme of bids for attention, sort of sustaining your love. She's grading papers and he slips one in. That's a story about them she says, beautifully written. He said, I slipped it into your papers to see if you would notice. She says, the Zen master Ikkyu was once asked to write a distillation of the highest wisdom. He wrote only one word: attention. In my mind, like that is what continues to sustain a love. We want so badly to connect with other human beings. That to me is her answer to how we continue to love. And obviously one of the biggest themes of this book that I think people who have been in relationships for a long time can understand, especially marriage. I'm personally not married, but I have been in a relationship for a long time. Infatuation only gets you so far. Once the honeymoon period is over, there has to be something else for your love to continue to thrive on. It's that saying of don't let your love sustain your marriage, let your marriage sustain your love. There's an important component to love, which is that it is an active choice, in my opinion, to love someone, to wake up every morning and to choose to love your partner. That is how we show that we love each other, because we choose to do things that we don't want to do because we love the other person. It all comes back to those sort of like bids for attention and for connection with our partner. And that is ultimately what I feel sort of resolves this issue between them. Like they have no idea how to deal with this infidelity, but ultimately they choose to persevere and to choose to love each other. It says at the end of the second to last chapter what the rabbi said: 3 things have a flavor of the world to come: the Sabbath, the sun, and married love. I just felt like it was such a sweet and sort of tender ending to their story. I like to think that it has a positive ending, that they will rebuild connection. So yeah, I just loved everything about it. I really did. I will say I only have one nitpick about this book. There is kind of a lot of fat phobia in it. I personally felt it did not add anything to the story. I think like 3 times that it happened. I know this book was written in, I think, 2014, but I still feel like 2014 was already in like the beginning stages of like, I personally think it's never been cool to call people fat, but 2014 I feel like is a little bit too far gone. So that is one thing that it just gave me pause. I didn't particularly love that, especially because it didn't really add much to the story. There's only one instance where it kind of made sense for a character who was experiencing like a shift in their life, like they became overweight because of something that happened. But again, I don't love the use of the word fat in that context either, so I don't know. But other than that, this book was 5 freaking stars. It was so good. I can't wait to read it again. I just love it. I literally sat with Jesse for like an hour and talked to him about how much I loved it. So yeah, that's it. I read 3 books in 1 week, which I feel like is really impressive, and I'm really proud of myself. Each of these books made me feel something so wildly different. It was just a lovely week of reading. I'm totally out of my reading slump now. Quite honestly, I will be having Jesse pick my books often now. I feel like he just did such a great job. I mean, I've already kind of like talked to him about how much I loved all these books. I just am so pleasantly surprised that he did such a great job. So with all that being said, let me know in the comments which of these books you've read, if any of them, or if any of them are on your TBR. I'm so curious if you guys have any thoughts about these books that are similar to what I experienced or different. If you like this video, definitely consider subscribing. I will be posting more book content on here very soon, and I just hope you guys enjoyed. So yeah, see you later, bye.